closer, my child.
So what's going on, people? I was going to say fellas, but obviously, ladies and gentlemen, how are you guys doing? I've got a special guest coming on. I'm not exactly sure when he's going to join, but I don't really want to tease it because sometimes it doesn't work out. But that's the plan. And I really just wanted to come on today because I really kind of felt like I wanted to just maybe share a little bit about myself and maybe kind of my journey just to kind of start out. Because when I was before I woke up spiritually and I started doing all this stuff, I was really into endurance sports. I did marathons, and then eventually I got into cycling racing, and I spent way too much time doing those things. But it was kind of like a therapeutic type thing, if that makes sense. Like that, I enjoyed training, and it was kind of a stress reliever. But the funny part about it is like that. Obviously, if you know anything about that kind of training, you're stressing your body like crazy. So when you do that, and it's your stress reliever, it's really not maybe the best at all times because sometimes you need rest. And I don't know about you guys, but I have had I've had a couple weeks at work, like my actual day job, the one that pays the bills. And I enjoy doing podcasts and making videos so much, but recording and editing and all the things, it's really kind of stressful at times, especially kind of like that. I've kind of set a standard where I want to come on live enough. I want to do enough podcasts. I want to make enough short reels to bring people in. And then, but I don't always feel like totally into it because, like the day-to-day grind of life just kind of just wears you down at times. And that's the way I've been feeling. And I was just like, so it's like, when my day job gets stressful, I don't maybe have the right mindset all the time to like be creative and be my jovial self and all those kind of things. So it's tough because it's like, because this is a stress reliever because it's something I really enjoy. And I feel like God has given me a passion to do this. But at the same time, it's like, it's tough because it's like sometimes you like end up burning the candle at both ends, and I want to give you guys the best, but at the same time, it's like I want to give you guys something because it's like because I enjoy it. I mean, I enjoy interacting with you guys. I enjoy the comment sections. I enjoy obviously the live chats. I really appreciate all you guys. So like the last thing I want to do is stay away because then I've got other issues because I feel like I feel really like led in my heart to do these things. But then sometimes, yeah, you're just really not feeling it. And so I really felt like that I got that verse put on my heart about, was it Philippians 4:13, that I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And so a lot of people use that verse in athletics, right? Like that, oh, well, I can score touchdowns. I can run this fast. I can do all these things. But that's actually not what Paul's talking about. He's talking about like he can do all things that Christ has asked him to do, despite the hardships, despite all the rough goings in life, your circumstances. And so I really felt like that. And I thought, you know what? That God will give me the strength to do this stuff in spite of, just the day-to-day grind of life. And that's why I'm here. I mean, because I said, because I really enjoy it. And I wish I had to give you guys a little more notice that I'm coming on. But it's like, but I didn't know I was really going to come on here until I did, until I said, you know what? I'm driving home from work and I'm like, I need to talk to y'all. And I wanted to share some stuff. And I was scheduling a live stream with my buddy, and I'm not sure if it's going to work out because it hasn't worked out in the past. But more than anything, I wanted to come on here and I've got some stuff to share. Um, that's the thing is like, actually, I've really had on my heart lately, and I had my buddy Ricardo contend for the faith of the Question the Narrative podcast. We've really been kind of encouraging each other, like on YouTube, like the kind of content we're going to make. And I have really felt led to make a real little season video, kind of like I don't know, maybe like a 30-ish minute video. Maybe that's too short. I don't know how long it would take, but I want to make like one of these kind of. I've seen so many people who have no business trying to debunk the little season, like on TikTok and Instagram and all these social media accounts who get a big following because the algorithm favors them. So therefore they have to answer every question. Oh, well, the little season can't be true. And then they give because Tataria is not enough. These people do not know enough about the little season to begin to try to debunk it. And I believe if they knew, they wouldn't be trying to debunk it. They'd probably believe in it. So that's what I'm trying to do, because I know that if you guys follow me on Instagram or TikTok or Facebook, you know that I make lots of 2 to 3 minute videos, and they're highly edited. I would like to make a video like that that's about 30 minutes long, maybe. I want it to be not too long because I want to be able to kind of hit the big, broad strokes and give people a reason why we believe this. And kind of like if they had no idea what the little season was, they could understand it. And I hope to do that so you guys can share it with your friends, and you guys can so when people say, well, what is the little season? You could send them one video. This is 20 or 30 minutes long. Just check this out. Tell me what you guys think. That being said, it's funny because that sounds really daunting to me, because I'm really thinking because I'm generally like not a write a script type of guy. I'm generally just the guy just flapping your gums and just kind of letting the conversation flow. That's what I like to do. And I think you guys enjoy those kind of podcasts where it's like more conversational podcasts where we kind of just let the content go where it goes. So obviously for me, that's easy. I love doing that. So like actually trying to sit down and with like a script and like try to put it together in a certain kind of way is yeah, that's tough. So maybe I'm gonna have to, maybe at some point, maybe because I need to almost kind of get my words out. Like I think like maybe I'll just have to practice on live stream, because that's usually the way I can do it. Because like I could maybe present it one way, maybe write down some bullets, and then I could say, okay, we're gonna go point to point, like why we believe in this. And I think that I guess it's like I have a certain standard that I want to reach. So I'm not just gonna put anything out. But at the same time, like I said, when my day job's stressful, like I have tried to like get home and I'm just like, ugh, you just kind of just falling down because I'm still working out. Not nothing like I used to, but like you work out in the morning, then you go to work, and then you get home. And then a lot of times I'm recording podcasts on other people's podcasts. I don't save enough time for my own. Thank you, Miles. I don't save enough time for my own. And then it's just like, there's not enough hours in a day, right? There's not enough hours in a week to kind of do it all. I mean, that's why I always pray, Lord willing, he'll open up a door where I could do some of this stuff more, like more frequently. I could do it more full time. I really appreciate what Paul's doing. That Paul has a very regular schedule. He's got regular interactions with you guys more than me, and it makes me a little jelly that he gets to do that. I'm not coveting here, but yeah, I mean, obviously, people who do this full time, it's like that's really my goal. I hope to do that. I hope to do that one day soon. Whenever the Lord opens that door, I'm going to go run through. I'm running through. When the cloud moves, I'm going to move. So that's my goal. But if you there's Jay. How you doing, Jay? We need to do a stream again soon, brother. We definitely got to get up again. Always have a blast talking with James J Dreamers. So I wanted to share this because you guys would really enjoy our chat conversation. Me, Alpha Talks, and Paul from Understanding Conspiracy on YouTube, because I often mention this. I always send these guys these articles about all this buried stuff. And sometimes it's not buried stuff. Maybe it's partially buried. But I saw something really interesting today, and I had to share it with Paul and Vitaly. And I thought, this thing, you guys have to see this, because this is one of those things where, like, obviously you saw the thumbnail. I said, history is a liar. And I know I'm going to get no pushback here. But this thing right here, I had never seen this before. Have you guys ever heard of, is the Walhalla memorial in Germany. And so just let's take some look at some pictures real quick. So this is in Germany. And I mean, just look at this structure, the way it's laid out. I mean, this thing is epic. Let's just okay. So you see, like obviously all the step levels of it. Was this thing built on a hill? I mean, I don't know what it looked like when it was first built, but I mean, thank you, Virginia. But check this out. I mean, they tell us this thing was built in 1842. Really? Really? And obviously, if you guys see up on where these people are, they look pretty small next to that thing. Look at that. Obviously, if you look at the cornice over here where you have the statues or engravings and all that stuff. Obviously, there's a view from inside, but I mean, these columns are absolutely massive. And there's, of course, the inside. It looks like it's all marble in the inside. Yeah, and then you have all these busts. I kind of have a feeling like a lot of this stuff was added later. That's my feeling on it, though. Check it out. It's got an angel in the middle of it. Let me see. I saw a couple better pictures with people next to him. But yeah, the one thing I was really noticing big time was that you see that it's built like on the side of a hill. My real question is, how much further down, if you excavated more, how much more of the building that's under there would be revealed? Because it seems to me, like in all the research we do, that thing definitely goes down further than that. And I mean, like, because obviously we know they didn't build that on a hill like that. I mean, I don't believe that they did. I mean, to me, it looks like they dug this sucker out. I mean, just look how dirty it is at the bottom. Is it real dirty looking because that was once all covered in dirt? I mean, maybe they built some of the steps and stuff later. I mean, I really don't know. But I mean, the one thing I really don't believe is they built this thing in 1842. And so what the general story behind it says, the Walhalla is a Hall of Fame monument that honors laudable and distinguished people in German history, politicians, sovereigns, scientists, artists of the German tongue. Thus, celebrity honored are drawn from Greater Germany, a wider area of today's Germany, even as far away as Britain in the case of several Anglo-Saxon figures. The hall is a neoclassical building above the Danube River in Dostenhof, east of Reisenberg in Bavaria. The exterior is modeled after the Parthenon in Athens. Yeah, sure it is. Of course, like they say, it's neoclassical. But to me, it's like, is it neoclassical or is it like literally like a Roman building? You know, Germany was part of the Holy Roman Empire. So, I mean, just check that thing out. I mean, I just don't believe it. Where does it say? It says where I'm trying to get down to where the history of when it was built. It says, what does it say? Does it even say when it was built officially? Scroll down. Sorry, I didn't do a ton of research on this. I'll be honest. Like I said, I kind of just popped on here. I thought this would be a good icebreaker because this thing is stupid. I mean, it just is. Okay, where does it say when it was built? Okay, well, it says the inauguration was October 18th, 1842. There were 96 busts plus 64 plaques of persons or events which no portrait was available on which the model or a sculpture. When the memorial was opened in 1842, Guido von Lessener authored a poem about Germany's greatness, which was set to music by Joseph Hartmann Stunz. Right, okay. Where does it say? Oh my gosh. Are you kidding me? So look, it says the construction of the building cost, I guess is that euros? I'm not even sure what that little thing is, but it says it's 666,666. Wow, that's a real specific number, and that's also a That's a lot of sixes. Obviously, you guys see that. Let me see if I can find some more pictures of it. There are maybe some better ones. Because I saw some really cool ones of people standing next to the columns. That's the thing that always kind of gets me is when you actually see like the Romanesque building and see how big they are. Because it's almost like the scale is never complete. Let me see. The scale never does it justice unless there's pictures of people in the pictures. I mean, just look at it. Those columns are ginormous. Ginormous. It just looks like, yeah, could we build that today? I mean, it is hard to believe that we couldn't build some things the Romans built, but we don't build things like that. So, yeah, I mean, like that's to me, that's kind of proof that we can't because we don't. The building is the building is 66.6 meters long. Is that true? Did you look that up? Yeah, it's incredible. As in not credible. I wonder if there's some more pictures of around it. I would love to go take a tour of this. I've got on my list. The wife and I have been talking about doing a boots on the ground in Europe. I've never been across the pond, and I am really, really dying to go. Where would you guys suggest we go? My first thought was Paris because Paris is obviously incredible. Germany obviously is awesome too. I mean, that doesn't look like it. That's a different building, I think. Yeah, Germany's obviously on the list, and I think you could probably do both. But I mean, this is absolutely nuts. It's nuts. Let me see. But yeah, that's basically what I had on the Walhalla in Bavaria. I think it's really interesting, yeah, that Germany, Greater Germany, was part of the Holy Roman Empire, and I really don't think we know exactly what that means. I don't know if that kind of means like was Germany like a central hub during maybe the millennial reign, like after the cataclysm? Was there something real significant about that where there was lots of Christians in Germany? I'm going to try to tread lightly right here. One of the reasons I haven't made so many videos is because I was watching I was watching some content about World War II, and it's coming from a maybe slightly different perspective than we've been taught. Actually, not slightly different. Let's just say it's diametrically opposed to the narrative we've been taught in school about the Germans from the 30s and the reasons for World War II and maybe the results after World War II. And it does seem, if we're just talking, let's just talk without saying any identities of groups. Let's just call them the communists. Okay, so the communists before World War II, they obviously had a revolution in Rome. And the communists were so brutal, they butchered the royal family in Russia, the Romanovs, right? And so Russia was largely a very Christian country. And then the commies ruined that place. And so then you had this kind of basically this threat on the doorstep of Europe is that you had, obviously what Russia's kind of European, but it's kind of more like a country in Asia. And there was this threat. And so then you had certain countries who were trying to become nationalistic because they were opposing a communist threat. And so what the commies brought was like godlessness. And it was just evil. I mean, they had no regard for human life, or maybe I should say they have no regard for human life. And obviously you had certain countries trying to, let's just say, like Trump, make America great again. Certain countries were trying to make their countries great again, like Greater Germany. I think it's really interesting to think about how all those things kind of played out and then kind of the results of the last, whatever, like 60 years, 70 years, and how the demographics of countries have changed and like the degeneracy that's been promoted in countries and like the certain cultures are just basically just trying to be erased. I think it's really interesting because when you really think about World War II, I always questioned my dad, and I guess it's because I'm just a kind of a curious guy altogether, as you guys probably have all noticed. So I have always really questioned, like, wait a minute, so why did the Allies align with Stalin? Because if the war was started because Germany invaded Poland, well, so the real goal at the beginning of the war, when Great Britain and France declared war on Germany, was to liberate Poland, right? You guys ever heard that? So yeah, Germany rolls into Poland on September 1st, 1939. I believe that's correct. And so then when that happens, the Allies, France and Great Britain, declare war on Germany so that they can free Poland, right? Well, right after that, the Russians invaded Poland too. And the Soviets, they also invaded Poland. Okay, so after the war's over, right? Is Poland liberated? No, it was not liberated. So it literally became under the communist Soviets control. So already, all automatically, right there, like we're not hearing the whole story, because that's why I thought to myself, I was just like, I said, Dad, so why did, if they had one really bad dictator trying to take over the world supposedly, why did they let another dictator take over a lot of the world? Why did they align themselves with that? And if you've seen some of these documentaries, maybe a revisiting of World War II, I'm not going to name the names, 'cause I'm sure this, like I said, this is a sensitive topic altogether. That, yeah, like that's kind of what happened. I mean, that's what happened. Like, so, like the communist body count around the world, I think it approaches like 130 million people. So even if you go by the numbers that you get from your history books about how many the Germans killed, how many Italy killed, how many the Japanese killed, it pales in comparison to the devil the Allies sided with. I think that's really interesting because it really is kind of like a tipping point of like the world we live in right now, and why it's so jacked up is because we aligned in the West with literally like the most murderous dictator of all time. That's messed up. That's messed up. But I think I said it kind of makes sense in like the little season. Like who's been trying to undermine all of Christianity all these years? Who's like literally this kind of the hidden hand that's trying to infiltrate things and promote degeneracy and literally steer people away from God? Let's just say it's the same people it always was. It's the same. There's nothing new under the sun. And if you think about how that you have like in Bible prophecy in the Bible, you can just see it plain as day. There's these kind of secular patterns. So in the little season, it sort of makes sense. The group that's literally spirit of Antichrist, that's trying to push the whole world into this kind of one kind of amalgamation and then to control them. And I do believe that makes sense that it would lead to a Tower of Babel type situation, and ultimately would lead to a war against the saints, a war against God, just like the Tower of Babel. It's like a mixing of cultures that don't really belong together. So a select few people can rule them. And where are they going to rule from? You guys know. Do you guys know? Do I have to say it? Like I said, I'm trying to tread lightly on YouTube. I might have a podcast coming up or two with my buddy Jay Slay. He's not afraid to talk about some of these topics. I'm a little bit nervous to talk about some of the stuff on YouTube. But if you guys have not seen some of these documentaries, and if you guys message me on Instagram or Facebook, I'll tell you exactly the one I watched. It's tough. It feels like that the way the propaganda has worked for us, we cannot talk about certain things. And what can we not talk about? I mean, the most important things. I mean, some of the most important things we cannot talk about because it's like I really could explain a lot with this knowledge, but I remember really thinking about it when I was watching. I was like, dang, the devil really is crafty. The devil is not stupid. The devil is very, very smart. That's why you can't talk about this one issue, because if you do, they'll throw you off social media. Obviously, they'll demonetize you, they'll cancel you, they'll ban you. And obviously, and then this stuff can really affect you in real life, not outside the internet, because you'll be labeled an ist or an ism or whatever. And that's why the devil's not stupid. He's allowed this stuff. I mean, he's obviously promoted this idea of political correctness, and we just can't talk about real truths, because it's like literally stepping on like the third rail if you do. I wonder what my guest is. I might have to text him. Yeah, no, I'm not trying to get banned. But yeah, so that being said, I am probably going to do a podcast on Rumble, because I feel like because who cares? Who cares if I get in trouble over there? I don't think that I'll get in too much trouble, because it's not that I won't say anything in love. Let's see, where is my buddy at? He's often got trouble with his laptop. But that being said, we do have some time for some Q&A if you guys do want to talk about some stuff. Whatever. I've wrapped enough. We can talk Q&A here. Okay. Maya says, JT, can you make an email that we're able to contact you about shady or little season stuff? I probably would say I have not promoted the Discord chat in a while, but that's probably a good place. Another good place is Telegram. We have a pretty small Telegram group. I got to be honest as well that I am not the best at getting back to people when they email me. I'm sure the people who've emailed me know that sometimes I do get back to them, but it's a little bit late. But like I'm trying to be as truthful, and as I started the podcast, that when real work stuff, like my actual job, some people say, get a real job. I've got a real job. I would like this to be my real job, but it's not. And I'm getting behind. I get behind. I said this is a lot for one man. I'm not saying I couldn't do better. I could do better. But at the same time, like when you guys see JT follows JC production, it's pretty much just me. I mean, unless I have somebody on a podcast with me, it's just me. I do the editing, I do the responses, I mail out the t-shirts when I send them. And somebody says, I dislike Telegram setup. Yeah, you know what? I feel like that I don't know what I was doing when I set up my Telegram. And I don't like the way it works either, because I want it to be like a more interactive thing. But I have a separate group where I have my videos posted, and then there's there's a separate little Telegram that's just the comments on the video. I think it's dumb. I wish it was kind of all in one. But yeah, like if you guys want to send me stuff on there, I will see it, probably because it's smaller. Also on Discord. But I got to be honest, again, I don't check the Discord chat very often. I just don't. A lot of this is in response to other people sending me videos, or sending me saying, "Hey, you should get on Telegram. Oh, hey, you should get on Discord." And I'm like, "Oh, that's fun. That's a good idea." But the best place to maybe send me stuff would be on X, on Twitter, because I actually do interact a little bit more on there, because I don't have quite a biggest following over there. So it's growing a little bit. But if you send me something on X, I do check X pretty regularly. So you can DM me, or you can just tag me in videos, and I will see them. So if you got stuff to send me, send it on X. Actually, that's what I was trying to do. I was trying to get people to hashtag JT's mixtape if you had videos you wanted me to play. And if you guys have videos, again, hashtag JT's mixtape on X, and I will likely see them, because I do not have the biggest following over there, like I said. And speaking of JT's mixtape, while I wait for my buddy Moon, I'll play a video. This is okay. So this is part and parcel of me being busy. I've I've recycled a few videos recently, and I don't know how many people have seen this. So this video is about a year old, and I think this video it's interesting. I think it's interesting. All right, I'm gonna play a video for you guys. Maybe this will get my. Oh wait, I got Moon joining me. Hey everyone, look what we got. We have the one and only Moon Henry, inspired by the King, and Moon is going to take us through a presentation. Why don't you share with us, Moon, what you got? What kind of information you got for us today?
It's a mind blower, dude. First off, my apologies for being late. My wife hid my headphones, so we're gonna have a little bit less good audio. I was looking for about an hour. But besides that, man, I randomly got led to read Daniel 11 and 12 a few days ago, right? So in the reading of Daniel, I thought about the Geneva Bible because one of the co-authors of the Geneva Bible footnotes is John Calvin. And somehow John Calvin knew that Pope Sylvester II would be coming decades after John Calvin was here, right? He just knew. And that was in Revelations 13, the footnotes. So John Calvin somehow knew the future, but not just the future. He knew the past. So in the Geneva Bible, in the footnotes, all these prophetic verses that we look at and we say, oh, we're never going to know who that is. There are people who lived at that time, who were there when they were there. And even further, there's a group of people for 1,000 years that had access to all information, knowledge, and there's nothing hidden like it is today. So open the Geneva on Daniel 11, Daniel 12, then back to Daniel 7 and 9. And what John Calvin was writing about the little horn, about the Antichrist movement, was actually insane because it matches historical records.
So you're saying that John Calvin predicted the Antichrist?
Yeah, he actually, so yes, he knew exactly who it was, why it was, and what this man did, or this group of men that turned into one man.
Oh, so are you saying that John Calvin would have been talking about in past tense of like the historical Antichrist?
Yes, he was talking in past tense because he already knew who this group of people was. Nowadays when we hear, so it's like you have preachers, right? And they will say things, their interpretation, and the next preacher along the line picks it up, and over and over and over again. You go a couple hundred years, and we are 100 times off what the Bible actually said, what it was intended for, and who it was intended for. For example, to the churches that are in Asia Minor, not were in Asia. And also Jesus said to my faithful martyr Antipas, when John of Revelations wrote down that, Revelation, Jesus was speaking past tense that Antipas already died, and he died in 68 AD. And we know the desecration of all the churches was about 70 AD, which is, again, it fits the historical narrative.
Yeah, no question.
So when I was it's crazy. It blew my mind so much because, well, what made me want to in the first place was that reading Geneva Bible for Revelations 13, because he quite literally says that the beast that came out the ocean was Rome. He said that the false prophet was basically, he's talking about the Pope who wore many different clothings. But he also talked about a Pope in Daniel chapter 7 and 9, which is weird. There was a Pope over the Hebrews, over the J word I can't probably say here, but there was a Pope over these people when they were being pillaged by the Romans. There was actually a Pope that was over the Hebrews and took instruction from the Romans. So when we go back to Revelations 13 and we have him talking about the Pope in Rome coming in as this beast, as this Antichrist, as the thing that has the power over the saints for 3.5 years, he said the same thing in the other portion. So when talking about the little horn, everyone's like, yes, it's the Antichrist. He hates women. He doesn't like they say all these things about the Antichrist. What John Calvin literally wrote about the little horn, first off, he went and he recalled all the past kings the passage was talking about. All these different areas and all these different kings that were involved, like the king's daughter and all these things. He actually names them by name. But when it gets to the little horn, he names off Julius Caesar, Tiberius, I forget his name. But anyways, he names out 4 different Roman emperors And it leaves off at Nero Caesar. That was the last one he mentioned, but even more so, he said the little horn was the Roman authority, the Roman Senate, and the Roman emperors. He
Hmm.
said that it was all Rome, and that the Antichrist wasn't necessarily a single person, but it left off with a single person at the end because, we had Nero. In the first century, all the Christians, all the Hebrews, they had to worship the Roman emperor as divinity. And if they did not, they were put to death.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I've often said that because even John makes it very clear because he's the only person who ever mentions Antichrist in the Bible. He makes it clear that says that it's a spirit and that spirit was already within work. And I always it made sense to me that the spirit that comes out of the bottomless pit is the Antichrist spirit. And that is the one that indwells a man. And then so then you have your man of sin. But yeah, it could be, and that's why you even think about like there's a fatal head wound and it's healed because it's like it's not really the man who's the Antichrist, it's the spirit. So a spirit can within dwell a man, and it would not be as easy to take out. Obviously, only God could take out the Antichrist, not another man.
Yes, exactly. So, with John said, children, there are many antichrists this time, but we are at the last time. That's what John wrote,
Right.
right?
Correct.
We have the political wound, the first wound in Revelation 13. Then we have obviously we all know that Nero Caesar died from a mortal head wound by sword. He stabbed himself in the head. And there was that myth that came about that said that he came back to life. I think he did come back to life. I think he was the end of this Roman leadership because wasn't he the leader in charge at the time that Antipas was killed?
Yeah, I believe that would be correct. Yes.
And it's just, if you want to say, why should I trust this guy, John Calvin? First off, I think they framed the man. I think they framed him because we had many people, we had John Calvin, Martin Luther. Martin Luther was against Copernicus and the whole model of the earth.
Hmm.
Actually, Martin Luther said it was Antichrist, that model of the earth.
Hmm.
But John Calvin, I think they framed him in a way that made him look bad and said, oh, he's the Calvinist. They believe that only a few were ordained to be saved. Because, with John Calvin, first off, like I said, he premeditated. He knew there was a man coming named Pope Sylvester II. And now if you Google it, first off, you can't even find it unless you look super hard. It's in some really ancient books like the Roman Beehive Catholicism. It's in that book. And it talks about, this Pope that wanted all power to be in Rome or, in that Roman Vatican, that rulership. He
Yeah.
wanted all power to be there. Martin Luther was against that. He didn't want, all this power to be with the further day Romans. But John Calvin, literally in Revelation 13, decades before Pope Sylvester II came, he wrote in Revelations 13, after talking about the beast, the Romans, the Pope, wearing many different clothes, he then wrote that Satan would be loosed at the time of Pope Sylvester II. Satan was not loose yet, will be loose, because when he's in Daniel 7 or 9, he's talking past tense. He says, John Calvin straight up says, this is the Roman Senate, and this is Julius Caesar all the way to Nero Caesar. But in this passage in Revelation 13, in the Geneva Bible again, he says that he'll be loosened when Pope Sylvester II comes on the scene. He didn't come on the scene until decades, like 4, 5, 6, 8 decades after, that was actually completed, after that was actually written. I don't believe that Geneva Bible was written in 1560, to be honest. I don't know when it was because they've lied so much. But he wrote beforehand of somebody coming that would release Satan. And now there's a whole bunch of stuff you can look up online where people say that Sylvester had a contract with the devil. I came across it a few months ago and I was like, wow, this is just
Some
really
people in
good
the
stuff.
chat are saying that Pope Sylvester was before Calvin.
Nope. And so Pope Sylvester, again, with the Geneva Bible, I don't believe that 1560 was the day of the Geneva Bible because he wrote in there that there would be a man coming, that Pope Sylvester would be on the scene, and that's when Satan would be loose. Everything that John Calvin wrote was basically everything was past tense until you get to Revelations 13 or 20 when he's talking about the releasing of the Antichrist or of Satan because the Antichrist is already in hell, and so John Calvin somehow knew, so again, now Google will hide the second pope. If you just type in Google, who's second pope, it'll tell you Pope Linus is second pope. That's not true. The first pope was right before the end, the Great Tribulation. And again, he had power over all the Hebrews, and he took orders from the Romans. And then you fast forward to now, again, he was able to call him in the future, and I forget. There's a certain title you can search him by because Google will not tell you he's the Pope. Only in a few books can you find that he's the Pope because it's been erased. I can't off the top of my head. I'll send you some images later. You can put on the screen when this goes down. But there's a certain name that he goes by on Google, and they do not call him the Pope. But if you look at the Roman Beehive Catholicism book, they call him the Pope. I don't believe that Geneva Bible was written in 1560. Like,
So
first off,
so when was forgive me because I don't know all the history, like the some of this church history. When did John Calvin live? Like, what was the year he like lived his lifetime?
oh goodness,
So it'd been
it
right
had to
around
be
right
in
around
the 1500s.
so right around the time of when the Geneva Bible was published.
Yeah, I mean, that. But see, the thing is, I think Geneva was written in the Millennial Kingdom. That's what I think.
Well, I
I'm
mean,
pretty
it sounds
sure.
it sounds like that. I mean, even based on the date that we have, it still would have likely been during the Millennial Kingdom because, if you think about it, if you saw the stuff we did about Gunnar Heinsohn, he's kind of pushing Jesus into like maybe the 800s. So then you think about like 1,000 years after that, then you're talking about like 1700s, 1800s is when really like the fully loosing of Satan would have happened. Now, again, I'm not really married to any of these dates now because if you see
Exactly.
how funny the first millennia was, which the 700 years was added, I think that it probably took society a minute to get their bearings right to start dating things correctly. So I think that sometimes it is like what Gunnar Heinsohn was saying is like these historical stories are true. The chronology is wrong. So like it's in the same way that when we say that, yeah, like, okay, so we can talk about 536, and obviously when all the things just all the seals broke loose and all the bowls of wrath and all the trumpets happened, and everyone's like, well, like the normies would say, well, that's interesting, but it's really can't relate to the return of Christ because it's so far removed. But then obviously in the Gunnar Heinsohn chronology, he's like, no, this was like right around this time. I'm not even exactly sure. If this stuff would have happened in the first century, I think most people would probably be way more on board with us. But as the chronology got stretched out and altered, now they're able to have that cognitive dissonance and to say like that, it's unrelated. It's interesting, but unrelated.
Yeah, and so I'm on Google right now, and this is actually insane. Google is working against the narrative that we are trying to introduce because the first time you look up Pope Sylvester II, he was in the 1600s. I have images, I have literal screenshots of this. Quite literally, I have screenshots of him being in the 1600s, right? Now, when you type in Pope Sylvester, he pops right up and it says that 1000, the year 1000. Again, I have screenshots showing him in the year 1600. It was
no, obviously, but
1640.
other people mentioned there's more than one Pope Sylvester. So like, you think it could be an issue here?
I mean, again, with this date of 1000, I don't believe that there was a pope in this millennial kingdom because we have the first pope in 68 AD, and we have and we have John Calvin writing the second pope. So we have the first pope, then the Great Tribulations, right? He's there working for the Roman Senate. Then we have the second pope 1,000 years later. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I have screenshots of all of this stuff I've done many videos on Sylvester II. And now we have, and this also doesn't make sense here because it says Pope Sylvester II, the year 1000, but how was he alive in 1600? Then it was about 1646, I believe, when there was many things going against his name at that point. Because the Roman Beehive Catholicism wrote that this man wanted all the power to be conceived in Rome, in the Vatican, and them alone. And I'll send you all these images so you can put them on screen with this. But I think it's very funny that, John Calvin writes beforehand of somebody coming that would release Satan. And then we have these myths and legends that there's this guy who had a contract with Satan. But he also spoke in past tense, talking about the little horn. That leads me to believe that he is smack dab in the millennial kingdom. And the date changes, of course. It's that I can't trust. And anytime I see a date now, I just don't trust it. For instance, the stars falling in 1700s. I don't believe that. The sun dark for all these times, 500 years before that. I don't believe that. I think all these things happen at the same exact time. You know,
Have you ever looked into that Fomenko's work? And he's the one who's, I think he says, he might be the one who says it's over 1,000 years have been added of false history. I know Gunnar Heinzen
yeah,
only specifically talks about the first millennia, but Fomenko was saying that obviously there's a lot more funny business after in the second millennia, which, yeah, I mean, I have wondered that too. I mean, I really have gotten to the place where I I can't reliably say, because I don't believe the stories about Columbus and things like that. So I mean, that's like in the right around 1500. So if I don't believe that, then why should I believe all this other stuff? Because I think that, yeah, I mean, if they were lying about that, then why wouldn't they lie about some of the early church history? I mean, it makes sense to me that when they were trying to publish the Bible in the common tongue of the time and the common language of the people, and then you have people literally getting burned at the stake for doing that, kind of makes sense that Satan might have been loose right around then. Because I mean, it's hard to imagine in the millennial kingdom that you'd be getting burned alive for trying to print the Bible.
I'm glad you said that. I believe that King James, I believe he's been adulterated by history. I believe that because the work of the King James Bible coming forth was incredibly difficult, and a lot of people died to get that Bible. And they say, "Oh, he's a diviner, he's evil, he's this, he's a," they say all these things about him. But there was a huge controversy when that Bible was being written. The King James, what, 1611, right?
Mm-hmm.
And again, I believe that's around the same time period of this Pope Sylvester II. How it, like, that's just, again, John Calvin said Pope Sylvester II would be at the time of the releasing of Satan from the pit. That's what he said, and it happened exactly like he said.
Yeah, no, I mean I guess I see the confluence of a lot of history that makes me believe that something was really happening right around that time. That things really kind of start to pivot, and isn't that's kind of right when you start to have like the Enlightenment period where people are literally moving right away from God right around that same time.
Yeah, I think that there was a time in history where they had all historical accounts forever. They had everything. They knew everything. I think they had quite literally, like, again, John Calvin was able to pen every single Roman authority in this little horn, which people say is a singular Antichrist. He was able to say every single one of them, but not just them. Also, like, the queen and the daughter of the king and all these weird things we read. And Daniel, we see all these weird things, and it's hard to put it together. And we kind of trust the historians that we see on TV, and they're like, okay, this must be this. But then, like, how he's able to pen everything exactly as it was. And Daniel's book was shut away until the time of the end. You know what I mean? Like, it was only available when Jesus came on the scene. So I think that they had all the information, and the minute that Satan was released, I think this part's weird because we don't know what happened. I have a picture of Jerusalem from the 1800s, and it's desecrated, gone. Everything is completely gone.
Mm-hmm.
And after that, they actually built. So people say, when did Mount Olive split? It's actually split. And it's split exactly as the Bible says. The Bible says it'll be split 0.5 miles to Azel, which, if I'm not mistaken, is downtown Jerusalem. And I actually have it pulled up on like a elevation map where you can see a huge split. God didn't say the mountain would just be split in half. He called it like a great valley in between it, going half a mile to Jerusalem.
Mm-hmm.
And if you go on Google Earth right now, you will see literally a giant valley, half a mile to downtown Jerusalem. And then by the end, 1800s, all gone. Something happened in Jerusalem, at some point in history. But then, right after that, they started building inside of this. They built inside of the giant crevice, leading people to believe it didn't happen yet.
I still think that just based on all the other sediment layers that have been added since, which I believe that the mud flood was Armageddon. I believe that all that stuff, that's why all that Roman architecture is buried. As I just shared some from Bavaria in Germany. I do really wonder, like, the normies really do like to play games with that kind of stuff. They're like, when did this happen? When did this happen? Well, this mountain is still here, and this everything's as it was, and you're like, but no, it's not. Like, if you really understand, like, that so many things even got probably leveled, buried. I wonder if that's where some of the sediment came from, mountains being destroyed and valleys being filled in, and yeah, there's the topography is clearly different than it used to be. As you see stuff that's just completely buried. Gunnar Heinzen had crazy illustrations. And I need to try to find them. I don't want to just screenshot his video because the quality's not so good. But he had depictions of Rome from the 1500s, 15 and 1600s, where they were literally farming in the middle of the city because all the sediment and everything was filled in over top. They were probably farming on tops of buildings that had been covered. They have the same pictures in London where there was this sedimentary layer that obviously filled everything in. And it was like there was such a cataclysmic event that it reset lots of things. And they were literally farming in major cities. But again, the history doesn't write about that, even though it's plain as day. Like I said, there's illustrations of it.
That's the weird part is history does not write about the fact that everything on Earth was melted. Everything, every continent, every country, every place was melted. They don't talk about that. They don't talk about really any of these major events. And like you said, they say, when does this happen? Well, when the Bible's talking about the tribulation, great tribulation, it says every land will be moved out of this place. Did you like the map from the supposed, again, with these dates, it's pretty incredibly frustrating that we can't really look at these dates, but all the land masses were much closer. The Antarctic was actually a warm climate with warm animals. It shows on multiple maps. And now everything is much spread out. California was an island. Like it was quite literally, it's on the maps. So everything is different than it was before. So we honestly know nothing in the grand scheme because all the dates have been changed. All the history is covered or hidden. It's just we've been thrown. And again, it's called Satan's little season where he deceives the entire world. Of course, everything's screwed up right now. He's deceiving everybody, and the power that's been given to Satan. This is funny. John Calvin actually wrote that Satan would have more power to deceive in the little season than he did before. John Calvin actually wrote that. And again, he wrote it in the future tense. Satan will have more power to deceive when he's here. He didn't write it like Satan had more power to see. He wrote it when he was like, as if he was coming in the future when everything else was in the past.
Yeah, correct. I mean, like I said, I feel like that the people who are on the side of the devil, again, we're not going to talk too much about it on YouTube, but as I was hinting at earlier, but it's like the same people that Jesus called children of the devil, they're of their father, the devil, are the same people trying to rewrite history. I mean, they straight up say that they're going to do that stuff.
Absolutely.
I mean, so like it is, I mean, it's crazy that that's how sly the devil is who he would really be using to spread most of the lies and keep some of this stuff hidden is the same people that the church believes they need to support no matter what. Even when they're committing atrocities and they're literally spitting on Christians.
They are the whole reason that people believe that we're not in a little season. They say, no, this happened in 1940. It already happened. Here's the creation. And but before that, I know there's a preacher who's like 110 years old, I forget. And he talks about what we're talking about right now as if it's fact because he knows it. Before that creation, before that, they all thought, or a large portion of people thought they were in the time period called little season. It wasn't until after that creation that all of a sudden people thought we were, back 1,000 years in history.
Here, check out this, Moon. I found this. One of these good Instagram accounts was sharing this picture right here. Check this out. So this was the was it the Sagrada Familia? And so this is one of those churches they say it took like hundreds of years to build. But look at this picture of it. You kind of see it's like in a field of like cows and stuff. Just an apocalyptic landscape.
Yeah.
Let me see if I can flip through some of these pictures. Look at that.
Exactly.
I mean, so you can see what happened. That place was they found this thing like this. And it's been all these years they've been trying to recreate it, fix it. But you can see, look at parts of it obviously look like they're melted.
And it's all Roman style architecture.
Well, not so much this, because this is more
I can't see it that good.
It's kind of like the quality's not so good. I'll maybe have to try to overlay some pictures here later. But this has got it's one of these kind of Gothic looking cathedrals, but is just completely wrecked. And I do believe that's where a lot of the timeline stuff comes from, is that they put dates on things of when they were restoring things. Repurposing. So there's your date of when it was created, but it's like it's clear that it's not created. Actually, I just shared this one too. I mean, this is what I was talking about. This I started the live. I was showing this thing called the Walhalla Memorial in Bavaria. Check this thing out. That's in Germany.
It looks just like the temple of Zeus that they had in Pergamus.
Yeah, they say it's modeled after. This is what they say, after the Parthenon in Rome. But I mean, just
Makes
look at
sense.
just look at it how massive it is, and you see, like, I bet you if you dug down into the ground right there, you'd find more levels of it. It's like this hill. I bet you they dug the majority of the thing out. That's why look how dirty it looks at the front.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
I bet you that was all under the ground. Isn't that wild?
Yeah, and yeah, that's what I meant. Like, the pillars of that Roman. But like you were mentioning, with this cataclysm maybe being the end of this great tribulations. We don't know what the people think, have all these interpretations that are just guesses, thinking that, the millennial kingdom, we're all on earth as humans reigning. That's not what Jesus said. Jesus told them that. They said, what if will we be married in heaven? Basically, he said,
Yeah.
don't you'll be like the stars in Daniel 12 when Michael came down at the end of the great tribulations. Said those that turn made of righteousness will be as the stars. So I don't think this millennial kingdom, I know some of it was on the earth, but I think more of it was in a spiritual tense, as they were like the stars. They were ruling in high places, because that's what Jesus told everyone. You'll be like the stars. A human's not a star, right? We're
Right.
completely different than a star.
What does it say? Paul says in 1 Corinthians 15, he mentions that basically, like, we'll be given cosmic bodies. Is that kind of like in the resurrection? That makes sense. It makes sense. Like I said, biblically, I believe the angels are stars. I don't really know how that works exactly. I mean, I'm not one of these people who claim to know that, but the Bible clearly calls the angel stars over and again. And it says, we'll be like the stars. Yeah, the wise will shine like the stars in Daniel chapter 12, or is it chapter 9?
12.
One of the two. Yeah, and so that's interesting though. Oh, thank you, Wendy. So your belief, you're probably more aligned with me. I know some people in the chat don't agree with us, and I'm fine with that. That I think, to me, just based on the research I've done so far, I believe that I can kind of show you when the tribulation happened. Now, trying to show the millennial kingdom is way more difficult, because I do think that, like, that's the kind of thing where, like, I'm not putting it past that Jesus and the saints interacted, but I do not believe they lived on the earth. I don't believe that was ever intended. I believe when it says, and I think it's in Galatians 4, it mentions the Jerusalem that's above. The Jerusalem that's down here is Hagar. It's in bondage because it's under the law. And then there's a free Jerusalem that's above. In Hebrews 12, it mentions heavenly Jerusalem that's got the host of the angels there. I believe that Jesus, through the resurrection, he's the first one to go up there, frees the saints. They come up there with him, and then they all reign from that same place. In the same way that in Ephesians 6:12, it says that they're wrestling not against flesh and blood, and there's these rulers and authorities, these principalities. Those are evil forces in the heavenly places. I believe that after Armageddon, they were replaced. So this is maybe like replacement theology. I believe that, it's interesting that, that a third of the angels were going to fall. And I do believe that those third were likely replaced by the saints.
It literally says that 1/3 of the people in Zechariah 12:14, it literally says that, that Jerusalem will be surrounded. And that 1/3, exactly 1/3 of them would find Jesus, would repent and change. 1/3 of that amount that was surrounded, which is actually insane that you mentioned that. But
Yeah.
I have to agree, man, because again, we'd have cosmic bodies. Things would not orchestrate the way they would here on Earth, material wise. And it's like, I think that it's possible that there were some kind of humans maybe on the Earth doing. I mean, really, I couldn't tell you, but they could be. But I believe that mostly everything big was done in the spiritual realm. Again, as we'd be like angels, and well, just.
No, I was going to say it is interesting. I do think that, we believe as Christians we don't pray to the saints. I had wondered that for a while about when we first started to talk about this. If some of like the illustrations, especially in like these cathedrals, the saints do have halos. They look angelic. I wonder if that's like is this something that was kind of lost or maybe deceptively kind of introduced later, that if they were depicting pictures of the saints being in glorified bodies, that later generations thought, oh, we're supposed to pray to them. But it was really more just a depiction of what they saw, and maybe they did interact at times. But again, you have this kind of idolatrous pagan spirit, so then they get confused by it. It's like the
It's
same way
like
like the Israelites, when literally they get led out of Egypt by the Lord, and then they say, hey, let's build this calf, and then this is the God who took us out of Israel, or took us out of Egypt. And you're like, how did they get that so wrong so soon? But I mean, maybe again, like, there's nothing new under the sun. Things get lost.
I think exactly. I think that these people, I think there may have been people, and they were just interacting with the saints because the saints were obviously of a higher dimension, higher power than if there were humans, than the humans were. You know what I mean? And I mean, this is exactly what you said.
What's your view then? Because I still kind of struggle with this. So what is your view about like the final battle, Gog and Magog? Because I have kind of really tried to wrestle with that idea. So if New Jerusalem, heavenly Jerusalem, is a kind of a spiritual, physical place that's not quite attainable until you put off this shell and you can go up. How does the devil raise up armies to surround it?
Well, first, how wicked the world is. One thing is, when reading these prophetic books, Gog and Magog, it was all centered around one location. And also, I believe all the land was within itself. I don't think there was like you crossed the ocean 5 million miles and here's another piece of land. I think that it was all within itself. Kind of like the railroad tracks going from the very southernmost tip all the way to Rubus Negro. So I think it was all together. And I think the way that he's speaking with Gog and Magog, I think is just saying that every person from the north to the south will all join forces with Satan. I think that's might be what it's saying. I could be wrong, and I think that we kind of already see what's happening, right? We have this whole alien agenda. We have all these humans being just utterly tricked, thinking that there's about to be a rapture. I mean, I've been posting for 2 years. They've been calling for a rapture every month for those 2 years. And they're so certain. They're like, oh, I've seen a video where a lady's like, God told me to write a note to everyone who's left behind and hanging up that they can have refuge in my house. And I'm like, what are you freaking talking about? No, he did not. Or like, God told me he's coming back next week. And it's like, all these people are saying that. And I'm like, surely it's the spirit of the devil is tricking these people and on the earth. But look how wicked it is. We have these phones which are recording our every aspect of life. We have all these people in power who quite literally are in allegiance with Satan. We have huge secrets from the north all the way to the south that we can't go. There's something happening in the north that we don't know about, and I have a feeling they're going to lead us there. And I think we've talked about this before. I think that I think that Jerusalem may be this crazy mothership they keep telling us about. And I think that with all the space forces, we have Bezos, we have Elon Musk, we have the guy named with the T, right? All these forces of space, especially with the AI being integrated right now, I think that it's all leading up to one moment where they're going to tell us that, these aliens, they're bad. We got to take them out at the same time. Let's all come together. I think that's what it's building up for. And I think they were going to frame New Jerusalem as a mothership. And I think that people are literally going to attack it because they're going to have no idea. I think they will willingly attack it.
Yeah, I guess I've always kind of gone back to this. I think it's interesting ideas like that. What if kind of the surrounding of the camp of the saints would have been something similar to like another Tower of Babel? I'm sure you probably made videos about it, like I did back in the day on TikTok, about when they had the Commonwealth Games in was it 2022, and it was absolutely with the one with the bull and the Tower of Babel and all that stuff, and it's like that was. Out of all the kind of opening ceremonies where they do things like that, that was where I was like, I could not even believe what I saw when I saw somebody break it down, and I was like, wow, they literally show a star explode. Well, first they show the Tower of Babel on fire, being destroyed, and then they show a star explode, and all the nations get their crystals, bring them together before this bull, and then eventually the tower is rebuilt. And I remember just thinking, like, that is the most insanely satanic thing I've ever just seen. Like, and I know that so many people don't have the eyes to see what that represented. But then you have like the EU building in Parliament building in Germany is literally looks like it's based on a Peter Bruegel painting, I think, from the 1500s of the original Tower of Babel. That's exactly why they made it look like that. So what if it is a situation where that either symbolically or actually physically, they are going to try to build up a tower up to heaven? I know that sounds crazy, but it's interesting the way that Josephus wrote about the Tower of Babel, that like Nimrod and them were literally talking about shooting arrows into heaven. To kind of, have you ever heard that story from Josephus? Yeah, literally, that's what it says in there, that they were like, because it's almost like, it's funny because I know a lot of people who have this this current kind of modern scientific view of things. They would say, "Oh, that's really silly that they were going to shoot arrows into heaven, because like, what are you going to go try to shoot God with an arrow? Like, that doesn't make any sense." But I mean, these people were not stupid though. So like, I'm of the belief that these people were obviously very smart. I mean, when they describe how big the Tower of Babel was, it was like incredible, like bigger than anything that's on the earth right now. So these people were not stupid. So if they meant to try to do this as an affront to God, and literally their purpose was to attack God at some point, what if it was something like that? You know what I mean?
I think the possibilities are open for literally anything, because I think that everything's been adulterated this whole time, and I think that most Christians are going. It sucks to even say. I think that most Christians are going to fall for this deception because pride. It's when you try to tell someone they've been lied to, right? There's this utmost pride that refuses to accept it regardless. And even if we don't show with dates, or we don't show with this, we throw all of it out the water and only use the Bible. And Jesus said, "Verily I tell you that some of you right now will not taste death." Nathaniel, you'll see the sky roll open as a scroll. Surely I tell you, I'm coming soon, soon, soon. So it's like, Jesus himself said it, but we have such a problem with pride and with this fake knowledge, this wisdom these days, where everyone thinks they're so wise and everyone thinks they know everything. It's the students trying to teach the teachers. And basically, I think that everyone, or a lot of them, are all going to fall for whatever happens, whether it's a Tower of Babel, whether it's they're trying to reach God in spiritual places through artificial intelligence or Project Stargate, Stargate portal. I think that's very likely what we might see, and that people are actually going to fall for it. They're already doing this alien agenda where they're saying that these people, these things are interdimensional, and now they're doing Project Stargate, where you have stargates and portals opening up, and they've been making portals all around the world where they're just constructing these huge portals. Why are they doing all this? Maybe they're going to try to say that they're interdimensional. We have to go into a different dimension to attack them, and through that, maybe we'll attack them that way. Or not me, not you, but whoever else is watching this and won't wake up.
Yeah. I mean, I don't. I mean, I guess I said I do believe that it involves some kind of the alien deception. I mean, it seems so obvious, and maybe that's why we could be wrong about it. But it does also make sense that when you have the crazy stuff they're doing at CERN, and like even the idea. Have you ever heard that? I know this is kind of a wild conspiracy theory, but like literally in that movie Stargate, like the one from, I guess it was like probably like the mid '90s. There's this ancient Stargate that's found in probably like Iraq or someplace like that, and then they build a real one that looks just like CERN, and then literally they can go back and forth, and then there's this kind of alien kind of race that had landed on this other planet that's very similar to Earth, and they're ruling these people they're treating them like slaves. It's kind of interesting, the idea that maybe it is something that could they perhaps make technology that does kind of pierce the veil in a way that that we couldn't imagine. I know it's really hard to kind of conceptualize that, but I have thought that that what it describes to me in Gog Magog in the battle, it says that the army that Satan raises up is of the sands of the sea. So I mean that's
Yeah.
it's describing an army that's larger than anything that we could amass today. So I have wondered that is it possibly this force that's in large part spiritual, like all the demons, all the cryptids, all the crazy things you can't even imagine coming up out of the earth, raising up these people, and maybe even a combination of actually flesh and blood people in some kind of way. Because yeah, it seems like if you really think about it, because the devil is a spirit, right? He's raising up an army. He's taking all the spirit. I mean, he's obviously taking all hands on deck, right? This is it. So I
Yeah.
mean, so I kind of do wonder. I do think that just the way it's described, it kind of I always bring it back to like that the Game of Thrones where you had like this undead army that's like literally at the gates. You know, like they have a giant wall that's trying to keep this army out. And when it comes in, you have zombie giants, you have zombie people, you have zombie dragons, the whole nine, and they're literally coming to destroy men. So I do kind of wonder too, like, is it possible that even like coming against the camp of the saints is that if we are indwelled with the Holy Spirit, the kingdom is here, right? The kingdom is here that connects us to the kingdom that's up there. So what if there is kind of like a last stand of like the actual saints on the earth, and then God rains down fire on the people that surround, like literally God's people who are Holy Spirit filled Christians.
That is crazy because, of course, these aliens will be numbered along with the people that are turning against, the Christians or whatever it happens to be. So that could very well, and again, I think they would do that because I think a big thing they're pushing right now, I think that there's many controlled right now, and I think they're pushing the narrative on purpose that we're in the tribulations and the great tribulations. I actually think they're banking off people believing we're in these tribulations. The pre-trib rapture didn't even come forth until after the releasing of Satan. If you're in the belief we're in the little season, the pre-trib rapture lie came from after Satan was released, not nowhere near any portion of the Bible. So they're banking on the fact that everyone believes there's an antichrist, there's a mark, and I think we see the fake antichrist, and I think we see the fake mark, and I think we see the fake false prophet. And I think they're banking on the fact that I think they're going to end up turning everybody on anyone who goes against these people. But I think the deception is just going to be so massive. Like you were mentioning, it's just, there's no way for us to know. Like, and there just isn't. We're in a time period that's undocumented. If you were living in the tribulation, great tribulation, you would know, okay, we're looking for this and we're looking for that. We live in a time where we have no idea what's going on. And there's all these crazy things happening at the same time. So it's very possible they will use a fake antichrist and will turn all the people on the Christians. But then even the Christians that believe we're in tribulations, they will end up being fooled when these interdimensional creatures show up. So it's really anything is possible at that point.
Yeah, I think it's got. I mean, again, just based on kind of my view, what I was just talking about, like who would be the kind of the sons of disobedience who the devil's working through during this time. Obviously, they're trying to create greater Israel. Obviously, God never said he wanted Israel to expand their borders past where he told them to. So why are they trying to build a bigger Israel? And how does that relate to Bible prophecy at all? I mean, it does seem like to me you have like maybe like a horror riding the beast again situation where like these people are controlling through this place, and it's got to have something to do with that. And I think that that's like the way that they are trying to manifest prophecy in this place to deceive, or again, these people believe a little different than us. They don't believe like the New Testament. They don't believe the way it's written. So they have a different kind of view on like what their role is. I mean, I've actually heard credible people talk about like that you have these children of the flesh who literally believe in this kind of what a political like a warring Messiah that they have to like eventually give them the kingdom, and everybody else is kind of in bondage serving them. That's interesting. So I've heard many people say that the way they view those prophecies now is like they literally have to go physically do it themselves. Aren't necessarily waiting on one man. They are doing it themselves. And I think that there's very clear evidence that is happening. Like I said, with the support of a large portion of the church in America.
I mean, look at these group of Christians trying to build a third temple. That is utter insanity, man. I didn't even think they would build the temple for the Antichrist. Is just the stupidest thing I could. They want this to come. These Christians want the tribulation, the great tribulation to come. They want the Antichrist. They want these buildings, and like you said, they're putting themselves out there to make it happen. You know, we all know there was never a third temple. He was speaking of he was speaking of the next temple to come, you know, with the exact weeks for that Jesus would come and reign or come and be, you know, put to death on the cross. That's what Daniel's talking about. But they are going out of their way to create this temple for this Antichrist and these sacrifice of these cows. They are quite literally doing everything in their power to bring forth what I guess they don't really know would be the worst thing in the world to ever experience. I mean, these people, dude, these in the first century, these Christians were thrown into golden calves that were hollowed out, and they were set. They put the flame on the bottom,
Antipas was burned in a brazen bull,
and they let them just sit there and turn and smolder, and they put their heads in the freaking bull so they could cry and scream out coming out the mouth hole. I mean, these Christians, dude, went through. I mean, their wives and their husbands and their kids were just what's the good word I could use for it on here? They were stolen and they were done terrible. They like what's the word, you know, when you pillaged? They were pillaged in the worst way. No one would ever want to live through that, man. Like nobody would. And these Christians are literally walking toward that. It's just insanity.
You know what? I have, like I said, I kind of give people a little bit of grace for that because I remember thinking like, oh well, if this happens, then Jesus is coming back, and then it'll be good for the people who believe. But it is interesting. I remember when I got pushed back way back in the day for that, and I never really had a good answer, is in Amos when it says, woe to those who desire the day of the Lord, because it's a day of darkness and not light. And if you do see, like, I mean, historical things, even if you just point to 70 AD and like all the atrocities that are happening in Jerusalem, it is kind of interesting to think like that the people who are welcoming the day of the Lord, they don't realize, like, it's very similar in the way that you remember when the sons of thunder, when John and James, they get rejected in that town. It's like, Jesus, do you want us to call down fire from heaven and burn this place up? And he's kind of like, you guys don't really know what you guys are talking about. Like, I don't think you guys really want that. And I do think it's kind of like that idea of like that judge not lest you be judged. When you're welcoming judgment on the earth, it's like, guess what? That judgment is likely coming for you because you're really not quite getting, like,
exactly.
Because like as Christians, it's like we're hoping for more grace for people, not judgment, because it's like, that it's like that if you view yourself as worthy to not be judged, then that's the person who's going to get judged. It's like the lawyer who's saying, at least I'm not like them. Yeah. At least I'm not like that guy. And that guy's just saying, I'm not worthy.
Have mercy on me. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. I think huge. I mean, because like, when you're basically saying, sometimes I'll catch myself and I'll be like, I'll be looking at humanity. I'll be looking at the Middle East and all this terrible things. And I'll be like, oh my goodness, God, stop this, take them out. Then instantly I'm like, no, if he wanted it to be done, it'd be done. Right. And what I'm calling for is him to lift up his mercy and to avenge all these people. And that would fall on me and everyone else who's all done wicked in this world. Mm-hmm. And if he hasn't already done it, then obviously there's still people that he's working on that's going to be saved. And I mean, it's just, it's insanity to think. I remember when I first came into the little season, a few months after I was, or even the first month, I was really upset, man. I was like, dang, I was like, God, I wanted to be one of those people in the tribulation. I literally prayed that like an idiot. And literally, I kid you not, the verse he gave me basically said, how foolish is it to wish that you'd want to be, or I forget the exact verse, I wish I wrote it down, but basically how foolish to wish, the grass was greener on your side. Or like, that whole metaphor thing. Mm-hmm. And I was like, wow, like he literally told me that how foolish am I for wishing that I would be over here instead of where I am now. And I never went back again because, I'm not going to, if God's telling you you have it made in the shade and you're good, then why would you want to go back to that 70 AD point in history? You know, that's just
It's
that's
it's crazy. I mean, it's absolutely crazy. That's the funny part, is to think like that. The way people read the Bible, though, is, again, like that. You brought up a salient point that we often try to bring up, is the book of Revelation was written to the 7 churches that are in Asia currently. And it's kind of like that. When I made that one video, I remember there's, obviously it's controversial to lots of people, but I remember saying like that those 7 places do not exist like they used to. Like, they had to dig up the remnants of those places, like columns that were buried under the ground. When they dug stuff up, it appeared lots of stuff was melted, just destroyed. And then you can imagine like somebody reading the Bible in 2025 and saying, gee, I wonder when all this stuff's going to happen. Like, you know what I mean? Like, with no like historical context, that if it was written to them, how could it not be relevant to them more than you? And
that's a huge,
how could anybody kind of place that whole dispensational view of saying like these were to represent church ages? But then when it says very specific things to those churches, how could it be true to you if it's not true to them? I really can't. Like I said, that's the thing. Is like you were saying, in the view of the little season, there's a lot of these truths, including, like I said, I was watching that World War II video. There's lots of truths that I've had to learn that I don't want to believe. That it was like really kind of it was a tough week or longer than that of just saying, oh, oh no, I don't really, I would rather believe this. But
yeah.
then you're confronted with the overwhelming evidence that no, it's not like what you believed before. The more you kind of just pick into and you're willing to accept that you were wrong, you're like, gosh, how did I ever get it so wrong? But
Yeah,
this is the way we were taught.
because now when we look back, where everything is so freaking obvious. He's coming quickly. Surely I come quickly. Not 2,000 years quickly. We know what quickly means. But you mentioned something about Revelation. This is so cool. A little something else about John Calvin. So in the letters to the churches, I forget which church, but one church had a different message than the other churches. Basically, they're going to have tribulation for 10 or 15 days, and then
Yeah,
God was going to
10
save them,
days.
right? This is crazy. So both John Calvin and Josephus hit the nail on the head with this. So, because John Calvin in Daniel chapter 11, he wrote that a great mighty angel came down from heaven and went and saved some of the Jews that were in trial and saved them. Josephus wrote the same thing about, a certain portion of Jews being spared while everyone was being destroyed. So Josephus wrote it, John Calvin wrote it. And then we have because that's one text right there. That's one part of Revelation where we look at it and we're like, nobody can figure it out. They're like, oh, this must be Jacob's trouble. No, but they look at it and they're like, I don't know, why does only one church have 10 days, another one have, what's going on with this one portion of time?
It is interesting. That's a very specific amount of time too.
Yeah, and then the fact that Josephus and even again John Calvin wrote a great angel came from the sky and gathered the children. So I'm assuming that angel was there to save those Hebrews that were in line with God. Not all of them, but a certain portion of them. I think that was the church that had that 10-day time window, because these things don't make sense to us when we read it now if we're looking at it as right now, because Jesus is giving specific instructions. Like, all right, say Pergamos. When Jesus is writing, having John write to Pergamos, he's telling John to write about how I know you're heavily afflicted, as the church has got farther away from Pergamos, because Pergamos is where the throne of Zeus was. It's also the seat of Satan, or the seat of Satan. And the way it was written in the Greek, it actually meant that it was the throne of Satan. So Pergamos being the worst part, they had a great mountain where they would put the Christians to unalive over there, right? And the farther the churches got away from this Pergamos, the more lukewarm they became. Laodicea was a good bit of, so the farther you went away from Satan's throne, the Christians were lukewarm. They were rich. They had no need of nothing. They thought they were all good. But into Pergamos, those churches, they were actually doing things for God to hold what they have, because he's coming. He's going to come and he's going to, whatever, avenge everything. So it's like these people, the instruction they got was all different. And again, if you know the history that goes along with this portion of Revelation, then it's so obvious who he's talking to. He's talking Pergamos. He's talking to those Christians like Antipas. Laodicea. He's talking to those Christians. It's like, I do agree in parallels in the Bible, right? I think that America's likewise Laodicea. I think they're both about the same, kind of in a way. But at the same time, he was speaking directly to these people. He wasn't speaking to us at all, right? He was speaking to them. And
Yeah.
we can learn from history based off what, if God tells someone to do something, we can definitely learn from that. But he wasn't talking to us. And if you know history, it's so easily true.
Yeah. What I believe the Bible actually is, I believe the Bible is a historical book that proves God keeps his promises. And that's what it is to us. So again, if we don't believe we're all the way through the end, we know that the end is going to come true as well because of all the other things he does. And I think that's what people lose sight about, is like that we can believe God because he's never lied. He's never been wrong. And that's what the Bible really is to me.
Yeah.
And obviously, and you learn, with the Holy Spirit teaching you like why God did the things he did along the way and how it worked out in the end. And I think that again, it's more reason just to trust God. But I think people do kind of lose sight of like what it was like in the New Testament too. And I do think that there's this undercurrent and like kind of maybe like the Torah keepers are like, there's nothing new under the sun. And these are the people who are trying to say, oh, well, to be a Christian, you really have to do all this other stuff too. If you really think about it, the way like in the book of Acts and in the spreading of these churches, it's like literally them proclaiming Jesus, this man Jesus, who the Romans and the Jews killed, he rose from the dead, and you can have life eternal through him. And people were believing, and then the Holy Spirit was landing upon them, indwelling them. And then it's like, so they didn't have to teach them the Torah after that. It was like they were already Christians. They were already saved, and they were just supposed to go walk in faith. And then so people are trying to tell them later, oh, you got to do all this other stuff in order to be saved. But it's like they didn't have the scriptures. They probably couldn't even read all the stuff, but they believed. There's one thing I want to say. I just thought was interesting. I was reading through Genesis. And what's an interesting story is the story of Esau and Jacob. But particularly how Jacob gets the birthright. And people have always questioned, but wasn't Jacob kind of shady? Wasn't Rebecca kind of shady how they tricked Isaac and he got the birthright? And you know what? I could be wrong about this, but this was all of a sudden it kind of just came to me about like, isn't that the kind of perfect illustration of like that God is not asking for perfect people. He's asking for people who believe. So obviously Esau was horrible. He didn't care. He didn't believe. He didn't believe in the promise. So Jacob believed. He was totally shady along the way, but he believed in the promise and he wanted it. So why did God choose Jacob and not Esau? Not because because either one was real good. It was because God's good. And it's like, it's kind of illustrative of the fact that that's what makes you a Christian. That's what makes you a believer in God, is just believing. And it's not about being perfect. And so doesn't that kind of show it all right there?
It's the same exact philosophy with Cain and Abel. He didn't take Cain's sacrifice because, it tells us in the New Testament that Cain was basically wicked. And we had, I hope I didn't get the name mixed up, Abel, who he gave him the firstlings of the flock, and he actually loved God. And it was like by that belief in God, not necessarily about his sacrifice, but it was about the belief in God. And I think that's a huge problem with the Torah observation there, just like the Pharisees, because they don't know God. When Jesus came, they didn't know him either. They kept the law, they kept it perfectly. Jesus said that they're beautiful caskets on the outside and inside decomposing bones. But like you mentioned, when Paul founded the church of Ephesus, everything was fine. And then goes by about a year, and the Torah observers sneak into the church, and they are now telling them they need to be circumcised to be saved, otherwise they won't be saved. Which is why Paul went and wrote the book of Ephesians, or the letter of Ephesians. Or I think it was Ephesians on this one.
Well, it could be both, but I think that element had been there. they continue to kind of like that, and that's why you see like it's reiterated over and over again, the law versus grace, over and over again, because like they were all constant. Because you can imagine they planted these churches, they set them up right. You think about in Galatians, like that's what Paul's saying. Like if you hear another gospel from anybody else, even if it's an angel, let them be accursed, because we already told you the right way. And then so that's why like the letters come later that, hey, I've heard this about you guys. Now I heard what's happened. And that's why there's this repudiation of this works-based salvation. And again, it's funny because like we are the right side of this argument is kind of somewhere in the middle, where it's like, is it about grace or is it about works? So it's like, or grace and faith or works. But it's like that when you believe, you do things. It's like there's no one who's going to be saved who just tries to not sin. That won't get you there. It's believing, and then obviously your faith being evident, and then you guys going and doing things based on what God's given you. It's just it's like it's not that saves you. It's the proof that you believe. It's the evidence that you believe is that you did something. You're not saved by doing something, but yeah, that's why it says that faith without works is dead. And it's not about works of the law. It's not about Saturdays versus Sundays. It's not about all these other things. It's about the belief in it. And that's the funny thing. And I really have come to this conclusion lately when some people try to say, oh, well, in the millennial kingdom, they were going and were observing all these feasts in these certain places. And I was like, you know what? Does that really make any sense? That obviously, if you read the New Testament, the way it's written, it's like they're not going back under the old temple system during the millennial kingdom. So that's exactly why the Jews misinterpreted the scriptures in the first place, is because they were thinking of this continuation of that, and that was going to lead to dominance of the world, and they were going to be ruling with the king. But so these things, I think in the Old Testament, they're talking about like the Feast of the Tabernacles and all the things that they're going to redo. It's a heavenly thing. This is a spiritual thing. This is in people's hearts. And that's why like the Gentiles are grafted in, and they're not forced later to go observe the law.
Well, yeah, and it's like, with the whole Torah observation, basically put it this way: if it was up to our works, if it was our works that saved us, none of us would be saved. Nobody, because there is not good enough stuff you could do, and once you actually find out how wicked your flesh can be and how much of a sinner you are, then you understand that, wait a minute, he's holy, I'm not. Only he can save me, and that's why it's only by belief. And yeah, the evidence of your faith is the works that you do. But again, like you said, we don't try to just not sin and don't sin. We actually stop sinning the closer we get to God. And it's like, oh man, I mean, how bad would that be? Paul said, judge no man, their holy days, their Sabbath days, their full moon days. Those who eat, they eat and give thanks to the Lord. Those who don't eat, they don't even give thanks, basically. Paul's saying, do what you're going to do, basically, but you're not being saved by getting circumcised. God will circumcise you without the circumcision, without putting on hands. So it's all a spiritual narrative, and it's mainly by belief. But if it was by works, we're all going to hell, man. That's the point. It's that none of us are good. We're good in the righteousness of Christ, that he who knew no sin became sin, so it can be the righteousness in him. Because we're not righteous, and that's the point, and that's why we need a savior. And the law, Paul speaks about it as a noose around our neck. It was a noose around our neck. That's literally what he says. Every offense that was against us was nailed to the cross, and they will come out and they will say, "Oh, well, Jesus, if you don't teach these men to observe these commandments, then you'll be the least." That's not what Jesus said. Jesus is doing the Sermon on the Mount, and he's going through, you heard it was like this, now it's like this. And Jesus says, if you don't observe these commandments, what Jesus was giving was commandments, not the commandments, right? They get confused between commandment and commandments. Jesus is saying that if you don't love those that, persecute you, bless those that despitefully use you. He's saying if you teach men not to observe these things that I'm telling you, then you'll be the least in the kingdom of heaven. He wasn't saying if you don't obey the Torah. That's foolishness, man. And it sucks that we have a very large group of people that are pushing this Torah observation, this name legalism, which is completely false. We won't even get into that. I know you got to go, it looks like. But, it sucks that we're seeing this happen right now.
Well, like I said, I think it's perfect, not perfect in a good way, but perfect that it makes sense that that this is kind of the way it's always kind of been. And it's kind of like that. I think what Jesus is really doing, when obviously he's showing you like what the law meant, like why you're keeping the law is more important than keeping the law. It's like that the loving God and loving each other is what the law was really always about. There was a greater law than each commandment itself. It was like, that's why he pointed to David when he was saying that David fed his men the bread of presence. He clearly broke the law if you went by the letter of the law, but
Yeah.
Jesus said he did not break the law. So what does that mean? If he broke the physical law, but he obeyed the greater law of love in order to feed his men, feed hungry men. And I think it's like, when it really comes down to it, I think that is why this little season, it makes perfect sense to me now, is because the people are still looking at things in a very fleshly way. They don't believe me or you because we can't physically show them every bit of proof, like physical proof. And even if we could, they still wouldn't believe.
Same thing as the first century.
Because they really don't get like what this really means to just believe God, because they think, well, I would see evidence of it. I mean, that's exactly why they would dismiss Jesus, because they said, wait a minute, he's from Nazareth. So if he's from Nazareth, well, then he can't be the Messiah. But they didn't realize he was actually born in Bethlehem and he was born in the line of Judah. Like they didn't know because they didn't believe, right? Because it's like he's showing them who he is, but they were trying to find ways to not believe. And that's exactly what's happening right now. And that's why it really is crazy that like the spirit of Antichrist is obviously the one Antichrist is in the bottomless pit, or is in the lake of fire. But there's still that kind of spirit where they're literally deny the words of Jesus in order to believe in the fleshly things. And it's like, it's the same group that's pushing it. And yeah, like I said, there's nothing new under the sun. And that's the same reason that the modern church is siding with the people, the one main group of people who deny Jesus up and down.
I think it's the spirit of Rome. I think the spirit of Rome is the Antichrist, and I think we see the spirit of Rome all around us right now. And still, Rome is controlling that group of people in the Middle East that are doing these terrible things. And what you just said, Jesus told them that the way the law was written was because they have hardened hearts. Like talking about writing of divorcement. He's like, I wrote it that way, or I had them write it that way because y'all are wicked, basically, because y'all are stubborn and stiff-necked. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, for sure.
Well, you got to roll, Moon.
Yeah, I gotta get back to work.
Well, I appreciate you joining us. Yeah, obviously, I may have to clip this live and clip this portion of the live and put it together as a video. But yeah, appreciate you hanging out, man. Dropping some knowledge for everybody. Everybody loves when you pop by. It's been too long.
Yeah, I'm gonna send you all those images so that people can see what I was saying. As far as dates on paper, as far as Sylvester being there after John Calvin. Maybe there's a duplicate in history, I'm not sure, but Google definitely changed since the last time I looked it up. That's for sure.
I think that's why the people like Fomenko and guys like Gunnar Heinsohn, they have shown that you, instead of having like this chronology that goes up and down, it's more like side by side. So like that, even, I don't know if you ever watched the Gunnar Heinsohn presentation we did, but was really crazy to me, and this maybe ties into almost your view of the popes, is that Gunnar Heinsohn actually put Constantine in the 1st century, which people would be like, whoa, how do you do that? Because you have all these Roman emperors in between. But I think what they do is they take governors and prefects who were on some kind of coin, and they say, oh, well, these guys must have been emperors too. And then they try to spread them out. I think it could be the same way, where you could have people who weren't necessarily popes. What if they were bishops? What if they were other kind of church leaders, and they said these guys were popes, and then you have this long string of popes that's really like there's not that many popes. It's just that they spread out different people, and they've put those people in those places.
I have evidence of that. Like, quite literally, I have evidence of them assigning bishops as popes to take place where, say Sylvester would be. Because now, actually, go on Google, it'll say Pope Sylvester the bishop. right? So I actually have evidence of what you're saying when they literally just take bishops and higher authority priests and they put them as they write a label on them, you know, as if to fill in this great gap that we're missing because we had the first pope, then apparently the world ended and we had another pope. So I definitely, I'll
Yeah,
send you that too, man.
there's quite a gap in between. Spread out like the
Yeah.
Mount of Olives.
Yeah, right. Well, cool, man. Thanks for having me on, and I'll see you later.
Okay. God bless, brother.
All right, you too, man.
I hope you guys enjoyed that. I can probably hang on for, I got a few minutes if you guys want to wrap a little bit. I thought that was good. Kind of like talking with somebody else about the little season. It's like, it's been a while since I've kind of really got some good short season talk. As I mentioned earlier, I have an ambitious goal. Maybe it's not as ambitious to other people, doesn't sound as ambitious, but I really do. I want to put together a pretty comprehensive, tight, like little season summary. I don't necessarily want it to be like pointed straight at the skeptics, but I really want it to be something that if you guys have people in your life, which I'm sure you guys all do, that do not know anything about the little season. And if you mention it to them, they're kind of just like, I don't know about that. Is that the Tataria stuff? What is that? I want to be able to kind of show like a 20 to maybe 30-minute YouTube that is tight, that's packed with, you know, like if you guys see my 1-minute videos, like on YouTube, or not YouTube, but on like Instagram, like 90-second videos, I try to put in so much. I even obviously I edit out the gaps in my speaking so I can make them really, really short and they're full of lots of information. I want to do one that's like 30 minutes long, probably, because I probably need 30 minutes, maybe 20 minutes if I can do it. And yeah, so then you could just send this to your friend and you could say, watch this. This is not too much. It'll be right to the point. Brevity is the soul of wit. And that's what I want to do. But like I said, but I got to write a script if I do that. And I can't just talk and just laugh at my own jokes. I gotta do some work if I do that. But that's my goal. That's my goal. I know I need to get the scriptures together. I need to kind of like, there's lots of scriptures, and that's the best argument we have. But I mean, we could spend a whole hour just going through the scriptures. You know, the other, I mean, I don't know. Like I said, I'm kind of going back and forth. I think I should do one video, but I could probably do a pretty good like 3-part series where you kind of go through each part of it. But I think it needs to be tight. I don't know. What do you guys think? I know you guys are already on board, so I think it's probably best to have a kind of maybe a dummies guide to the little season where people could really kind of understand it. And then you could send it to all these social media people who are experts about everything, who are trying to debunk the little season, and they really don't know anything about it at all. They know just enough to be dangerous. Paul from Understanding Conspiracy says you would be the one for the job with the script. Oh, really? He's volunteered me for that. But he's the writer, though. He's the writer. To show my stepdad, yeah. Anybody got any questions while I'm live? Got a good crowd in here today. Over 500. That's good. There's Moon. Hey, everyone. Oh, yeah. By the way, Moon Henry's his YouTube account is @Inspired by the King. I will put his link in the description. So, yeah, if you guys, he's been growing his YouTube channel. I think he's up to like 8,000 subs now. He's obviously massive on Facebook, and he was on TikTok until they banned him. But he's probably already got more followers on TikTok than I do, because TikTok is terrible. Not because he's got more than me, but because they banned both of us. Can you believe they would ban either of us? All the crap that they let go on there. Oh yeah, right before that, I was teasing this video. Maybe we can talk about this for 1 second, and then I'll read some. If you guys got questions, maybe I'll play this while you guys ask me some questions. Guys, I might have the most epic hidden in plain sight of all time. Now, if you saw Tucker's podcast with Roseanne, he mentioned that the Nephilim might be running the show still today, and that's why there's so much corruption in the world.
the people who run our society consider themselves gods.
But what does he mean by that? Well, check out this clip from Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief.
Look, man, remember all the myths about great gods and goddesses? Well, they're not myths. Remember what Mr. Bruner said? Sometimes they come down to Earth and they fall in love with mortals, and then they have kids?
No way.
Yes way. Yep, you're a demigod. Look, don't worry, but you're not alone. There's hundreds in the world. Some lead normal lives, and some, I'm not allowed to divulge their names, are very famous. I'm talking about like White House famous.
Okay, so if you guys know, the Greek gods are the Watchers, and their sons, the demigods, are the Nephilim. So he literally says that some of the demigods are still around and they're White House famous. Speaking of White House famous, who's the most famous president of all? George Washington. Now let's go look at the Capitol Rotunda. Look at the ceiling. This is what they call the apotheosis of George Washington. George Washington ascending to be a god, sitting amongst the Greek and Roman gods. George Washington's monument is an obelisk. That's a symbol of Osiris. Once again, another god.
Washington was definitely a Freemason. Matter of fact, they cast sprigs of acacia at his Masonic funeral to signify him going on to the land of Osiris in the underworld. Now, they believed Osiris was already in the underworld, and they believed that Washington was the America's first Osiris, but he wasn't meant to be the final. He was meant to be a type.
And consider this, that all the presidents are related, save Martin Van Buren. They're all cousins.
All the presidents, with the exception of one, share the same grandfather.
No, they're all cousins,
I
and they're grandsons of John Lachlan.
So if George Washington was a demigod, that means they're all related to the demigods.
At the inauguration of every U.S. president, the president is up there, right there between the dome and the obelisk, right there in that power generator, and right around the corner at the Herodome, which is what they call the Masonic Mecca of the world. They are literally doing the raising of Osiris ritual while the presidential inauguration happens at every election. And they are literally calling on the spirit of Osiris to raise up, or Apollo, however you want to slice it, to come out of the underworld and to possess the president. You know, the president-elect walks into this ritual a man, exits the ritual a god.
Is that what Tucker was talking about?
They're more than human.
Oh, I noticed.
They
That's why
think
they
they're
want to live forever.
royals. They think they're like royals in a rarefied sphere of DNA or something above us.
Am I reaching, bro?
I don't know if this is the Nephilim, right?
I was going to say,
I don't know.
I know.
Here we go.
Or am I right? Guys, I might... What do you guys think? Was I reaching, bro? Or was I right? It's really interesting. It's really interesting. I've always say it's one of the most interesting things is that they're all related. And you know, somebody has mentioned that the little girl, who I often quote, she says that Martin Van Buren was not related. He was the only one wasn't related. I've heard that the little girl was fallible. She got it wrong. He's actually related, I think, on his mother's side. So she missed that one. Which actually makes more sense, because I always wondered, I said, how does Martin Van Buren how did he get in there? Like so soon after they start introducing presidents, how did they get a guy who was not in the club? I think that it makes more sense that he was in the club, because why not? Like, because how would they have let that happen? And lots of people ask, oh, is Trump related? Well, again, it's difficult to probably pin down an exact family tree all the way back to John Lachlan, because he supposedly lived in the 1200s. But yes, I believe that Trump is also related to them. You know, again, like whether people believe he's in the club or he's not in the club, he was certainly in the club in order to have that much influence in New York City and also Hollywood. Now, obviously, I've always said that Trump is a wild card, because it does seem like that he goes against them at times. But yeah, I believe that, yeah, I think he's playing a role. Maybe he does go out on a limb at times, but there's other historical figures, at least that we're told about, whether it's true or not, I'm not sure. But guys like Napoleon, the guy in Germany with the little mustache, that they were kind of in the club, but they're kind of not in the club, because they went against the powers that be. And then when they did that, they had to go. You know, even like a John F. Kennedy, like that Was he in the club? Yeah, I mean, obviously the Kennedys were in the club, but they still offed the guy. So I don't know. I mean, maybe sometimes they do fight back, but again, like that, you're fighting against the machine, fighting against the cabal. I mean, yeah, I mean, eventually you can't fight against them in this world. Not you can only fight against that with spiritual battles. God's got to fight those battles. We cannot fight against the authorities. And God tells us actually not to. Spiritually, we fight back. Okay, let me see. Do we got any questions? I got 10 more minutes. And I'm sure I probably missed some questions. I had to use the restroom. Been trying to flew it up. I would say, do you know George Washington's prophecy of the USA versus the world came from an angel? No, I have not heard that one. I think that there's some, I mean, I'm sure people who've listened to my live streams and my podcast, I mentioned over and over again that there is something really fishy with George Washington. That why he's depicted as a Roman at times. Even, you know what, there was a really cool picture I saved on my phone. I'm sure you guys have seen this. You know who was also depicted as a god is Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln is definitely depicted as a god. And I think it's really interesting, the picture of, let me pull up this picture. This picture of the Lincoln Memorial. Now, this picture, I'm sure a lot of people have seen this, but I think this picture is just so mind-blowing. So just think about that. Like, just look at the landscape. Look to the right. There's like a wooden shack. And then it's just like, did they build the Lincoln Memorial in a swamp? Like, where is this even happening? And then just to know that there is a statue of a man named Abraham Lincoln, and it's very Zeus-like. Like, it looks like, like Moon mentioned earlier, that there was a famous Parthenon with like a gigantic, it was one of the wonders of the world, like this giant statue of, and I think I might even used it in my video, of Zeus sitting on a throne. Yeah, Abraham Lincoln, sure enough, looks like that. I mean, I think that, let me see. I think that this picture of, I mean, like how big he looks. If you guys have never been to DC, maybe one day we'll have to do a meetup in DC in the belly of the beast. But like, it is really wild to see how big. I mean, because again, you don't get quite the scale of it until you actually get there. Let me see if there's it. But again, that's the interesting symmetry of the Washington Monument and the reflection pool staring at it's kind of like, again, I've always heard like the Freemasonry imagery of the phallic symbol, and then it's pointed at the rotunda, where George Washington is in the big belly of it. That's weird. It's really weird. Yeah, and I think actually, I almost made a video about this, and maybe I'll do it this spring. There's a very interesting, I think, on the spring solstice, that you see that picture right there. I'm pretty sure that's what it is. That the Lincoln Memorial does not often get sun directly in its face, but it just so happens, I think, on the morning of the spring equinox, that's what happens. Guys, there's no way that stuff's coincidental. There's nothing new under the sun. Let me see. I want to share one more picture. I thought I shared this on my Instagram story, and maybe we'll just talk about this for a second, and then we'll close. But I thought this picture is just the most absurd picture. Okay, so what you guys see right there, that is a picture of a temporary structure, one of the many temporary structures from the 1893 Columbia Exhibition World Fair of Chicago. Look how stupid that picture looks. that thing is, those columns are so ginormous. And the detail on them, oh my gosh. You could never convince me that that's temporary. Look at it. It looks old too. I mean, look at the bases of the like the parts of the columns, the bases of the columns. It looks really dirty. It looks like aged stone. You can see staining on there. We're supposed to believe that was brand new. Nonsense. Total nonsense. Let's see. Of course, I did say questions. So, question: what's the best way to send you info? Like I said, I would probably say, I said that I got asked this question earlier in the live. I said the best place to send me info would probably be on X, because that is probably the account I have the least following. If you send me on X, you tag me in a video or you DM me, I might see it because I check X pretty regularly now. I'm trying to grow that channel or that account. And the stuff like Discord and Telegram, honestly, I do not check that as often. Usually if you DM me on Instagram, I will find it eventually. That's my but yeah, that's it. Question: have you seriously looked into full preterism for good teachers like Mike Sullivan, Don Preston, and William Bell? Just curious if you've done some research on their interpretation. I have not really researched full preterism too much because there's certain kind of barriers that I don't know that. I mean, I probably should just, as far as just due diligence to look into it. But here's what I always say is like that if full preterism was true, then I think we would know. I don't think it would be up for debate if full preterism was true, because it's like we're clearly living in a very deceptive time. So in the full preterist view is like, why is everyone deceived right now? In the little season view, it's very clear why everyone's deceived is because the devil is loose and he's deceiving everyone. But in the full preterist view, the devil would be burning in the lake of fire right now. So who's doing all the deceiving? So that's my belief, is if everything had been fulfilled, we would know, because all the evil would have been purged out of this place. But all the evil is not purged out of the place. So therefore, to me, I can't, like I said, that's the bridge that's very difficult for me to cross. DC is Rome. Yeah, I mean, actually, believe it or not, we talked about this with Old World Exploration, that literally the land that DC was built on was once called Rome. Guys, you can't even make this stuff up. You cannot make it up. Oh, somebody's asking about the temple. Are you talking about the altar of Zeus? Yeah, they moved Satan's throne biblically from Pergamum to Berlin. And it's literally in a museum in Berlin to this day. They supposedly took that thing apart piece by piece and put it together in Berlin. Pretty wild, pretty incredible. Thank you so much, Wendy. I enjoy this conversation too. I came on here as I was telling everyone, it's been a stressful couple weeks at work, and I have felt like not very creative. I haven't even had the normally it's not too hard for me to cut reels out of my videos, like the podcast, the JT's mixtape stuff. And I had no energy to do it. Like I got videos that I think could be good, and I couldn't do it. And so I really did feel like that God gave me that verse in my head today about how that I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And I was just like, because I love doing this stuff, but it's hard sometimes. It's just like I get exhausted, and it's like it is a lot of work to do it. And it's funny because even doing these live streams, you know me, I can talk a long time, but when I do it, I'm like really drained. So it's tough. It's tough to do it. But you know what? I really do feel like that God picked me up today. I feel like that I needed this. This kind of helped recharge my batteries. Actually, I think I'm going to do a podcast tomorrow night. It's called The Phone Booth. Guys I met on the Phone Booth podcast with Bill and Ted, and I think I think it was, I'm not sure if Death's going to be there, or Rufus. But I met those guys over on X. And so I think I'm doing that on 8 o'clock. I'm not sure if I get details of where you guys can watch that at, because I can't guarantee I'm going to post that here. But I'm excited to talk with those guys. Thank you so much, Casey. But yes, there's I'm really looking forward to doing some more podcasts, and I do feel like that that this is what I needed. We can do all things through Christ who strengthens us, and I am proof of that. Oh, and one more thing. One thing I really want to leave everybody with. I was listening to some kind of like worship type music this past week because again I was feeling like a little glum, a little anxious, and I was kind of really just trying to fill my head with like kind of godly music. And there was a really good line in one of the songs, and it had something to do with like that I believe God is real because God's changed me. And I remember really thinking about that, like that again, as I first came on, I said I was really interested for pretty much my whole 30s into my early 40s into fitness stuff and races and exercising and all that stuff. And then I got to talk to a friend the other day, and I said that I really felt like, yeah, that's how I could tell people for sure that I know God is real. I know that God can change lives because I'm here. Because God has given me this platform, this ability to talk to you guys, to reach so many people, because this was not from me. Like, this is not something I ever thought I wanted. But obviously I'm so thankful and blessed to be able to do it. And it's like, if not for God, I mean, it's like I said, everybody doesn't have to believe me. Only I know. And that's all that really matters. Is like, I know that God did something for me that I could not do apart from him. So therefore, that's all the proof that I need. And I think that that's the real cool thing about that's our testimonies and the way that you can kind of really share God with other people is that, like, especially like when there is a change in you and you can tell them, like, it's like, I love that one was the, I think it's in John, was it John 9 when Jesus heals the blind man? The man was born blind, and he's like, what you're asking, I don't know, but all I know is I was once blind, but now I see. So it's like, whether you guys believe me or not, all I know is that he changed me. So that's the important thing. So hopefully that encourages you guys, because I think that sometimes it is cool to remember like how far we've come. We know we don't look back. When we put their hands to the plow, we don't look back. But at the same time, it is kind of cool sometimes to look back and you're saying, gosh, he's really taken me pretty far. And I love that expression. Like, God hasn't got you this far to only get you this far. God has got more for us all. And I encourage you guys with that today. I really appreciate you guys. Obviously, welcome to the club, Casey. You guys bless me so much with your super chats, and obviously just you guys just being here. I really appreciate y'all. I will see you guys soon. And like I said, look out for it. Maybe I'll try to share on my community page when I'm going to be doing that podcast. I know it's going to be 8 o'clock tomorrow night. If I can get you guys details, it'd be cool if you guys showed up. I love you guys. God bless y'all.